Welcome to Mamahood After Trauma, where we stop pretending and heal out loud. I'm Emily Cleghorn, trauma survivor, cycle breaker, and mama rebuilding from the inside out. If you're ready to break cycles, trust yourself again, and rise without shame, you're in the right place. Let's go. Before we dive in, I want to introduce you to something brand new. If you love the podcast and want a deeper connection to your healing, check out the monthly Peace Pack, a small trauma-informed tool delivered each month straight to your mailbox to help you find calm in the everyday. You'll also get access to our private Patreon community where mamas like you can share, support, and learn together. Sign up with the link in the show notes. Hello, mama, and welcome to this episode of the Mamahood After Trauma podcast. I am honored that you have taken some time out of your busy mama schedule to tune in and listen to our conversation today. Today we are joined by Julie. Welcome.
Nice to be here, Emily.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to our conversation today. So let's dive right in, shall we? Can you share a little bit of your story with our listeners and how you came to be in the space?
Sure. So again, my name is Julie Barth, and I am the mother of six and an author. And I have had several situations in my lifetime where I found myself in crisis. Just to start out, I married my grammar school sweetheart when we were right out of college, and we had a son, and then ended up having a daughter with special needs. She was diagnosed, but not until 3 years after her birth, with something called primordial dwarfism. So we spent about 4 years going from hospital to hospital, first of all, trying to get a diagnosis, secondly, just to try and get her to a place where we knew she was going to stay here. It was kind of a mix of medical malpractice and the underlying genetic predisposition that she had. Right after we finally got her to a stage where she was doing much better, my husband fell ill to pancreatic cancer. And at the time, we had four small children, ages 6 months to 10, and he was given 2 weeks to live. So it didn't happen that way. We fortunately, in some instances, and unfortunately, had about 16 months with him before he passed in 2009. After that, I ended up getting into a severely abusive relationship, which lasted for about a decade. And after coming out of that relationship with him, I decided to open up a charity called the Colin James Barth Outreach, which is an organization that it's a nonprofit that is dedicated to try and help women who suddenly find themselves as head of household and responsible for things that are overwhelming in nature, and really just, we're trying to save women before they slip into poverty by boosting them where they are instead of waiting till they lose everything to help. So it's just kind of a
Wow.
quick synopsis.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about how you navigated your way through your trauma recovery to come to a place where you could open a nonprofit to support other women.
So when I came out of the situation with Colin, caregiving him, we were probably about 36 at the time when I think he was 35 when he passed. And we had these, little children, and we were very blessed in that the community around us helped us, with funding and fundraisers, and they really just, stepped up for us. And when he passed, I made a commitment to him and to myself that his illness and everything he went through wouldn't, some meaning had to come out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, when he passed, I kind of just shelved it. I couldn't deal with it. I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't sit so it really took coming out of the second situation of emotional abuse and all of the things that I felt I could prevent for other people and kind of be a voice, that I decided the only way to make something that's really horrible in your life meaningful is by turning it to a learning lesson, and kind of
Hmm.
believe that once we go through hardships, the best way to turn them into something meaningful is to take a stand on something, or make it a lighter, landing for the next person that has to come through it. So
Absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
kind of where my commitment's been.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned when you were introducing yourself that you're an author. So tell us a little bit about your book or books.
So my first book was released last year. It's called Notes from a Blackberry, and it sat on my laptop for about 15 years while I was, moving on past the caregiving stage, and getting into the
Hmm.
second relationship. When I would take my husband to chemo, um, it was on Tuesdays, and it was just the two of us. So we would leave our four little kids behind. And I thought, oh, what a perfect time for us to reconnect. Well, unfortunately, he was so sick that I had a Blackberry, and I was still unpacking all of the things that I went through with Tatum, who's my special needs daughter. I think we traveled to, she had 40 some surgeries, and anything that could go wrong had gone wrong. So I started just kind of telling her story, and then it flowed into his story. And I really just did it so that my children, because I knew that they would probably never get to meet him. So it was more for their purpose and our family. But after coming out of the second situation with the second husband, I had the courage to read it over. Other people read it. And, the takeaway from a lot of people was, gosh, you were so lonely. And
Hmm.
I didn't feel lonely at the time. So, I really just felt, along with the charity and my daughter's art, that if people read, my inner thoughts, because they were, it was just like everything that I was thinking I put on paper without a filter, without a guard. And I hope that in releasing it, other people will read it and understand that they're not alone. And, if they're willing to give me a break on some of the things that I thought, some of the things that I did that I was so harsh on myself about, then maybe them give themselves a break and understand that, in unimaginable times, we do unimaginable things, and it's okay
Hmm.
because you're human, and, you know, give yourself a break.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're in survival mode, you're you're concerned about survival, not
Right.
about other things.
Yeah.
So
There's
you,
just not really a whole lot of time to, do much
yeah,
but get to the end of the day.
yeah. So how has your recovery journey gone in recent years with all that you've endured a lot. So how are you doing now?
Yeah, I think that I've always been kind of a pleaser by nature. I don't ever want to like ruffle anyone's feathers. I don't like conflict. But I found that those very things that make me uncomfortable tended to keep me also in a place of, you know, being submissive and always taking responsibility, or trying to fix me to fix the relationship.
Mhm.
And so I think that having to when we decided to get divorced, he came for me big time and said a whole lot of things about me that were not true. So I think having to defend myself and really take a hard look at, the things that I will take responsibility for, but other things that I had been taking responsibility for that were not something that I should have. I think that that gave me the strength to be like, no, to finally stand up and say, no, that's not right. And to, look at other situations and think, if I can do it, and
Mhm.
if I put myself out there and show people my ugly, because that is something that none of us want to do, and I think that kept me stuck in the relationship I was in, because I didn't want people to know, first of all, that I'd failed as a wife. That would, to me, was, something I never wanted to admit, that it didn't work. And another thing is, relationships don't happen in a bubble. So I did things that I was not proud of. And I didn't want to be exposed for the things that I thought people would judge me for. But now getting on the other side of it, I see that it doesn't really matter if people judge me or what they think of me, because I did everything that I did with goodness and good intentions, and it didn't obviously work out the way that I wanted it to. But I hope that I can be, by exposing all of those things, I hope that someone out there that, you know, is feeling the way that I did at that time, and maybe pausing and not getting out of something they should for fear of the unknown. I hope that it gives them the courage to find something better than what they're living, because it was literally a decade of just torture, emotional torture, and nobody should live that way. So if I have to come forward and tell the ugly of what went on in my home and the ugliness of some things I'm not proud of, then I feel like it's all worth it. So I think that's part of the healing of all of this, is when people come to me and they say, "Oh my gosh, I'm there.
Hmm.
Thank you for telling your story because it gave me courage." Then that fuels my, I think when you help someone else heal, you heal yourself.
Absolutely. And, I think especially in our society now, where we've got social media as the highlight reel for a lot of people, that vulnerable, honest, this is what really happened, the unfiltered version is what people are craving because not everything is sunshine and unicorns all of the time. And survival mode doesn't isn't pretty. It's not
Yeah.
pretty. And um it's something that a lot of people try to hide, even if they've been living in survival mode for 5, 10, 15, 30 years. It's something that we associate shame with. Um, but it's it's just your your body doing what it needs to do to get through because its main objective is to survive.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. And I think that, when you're outside of these situations, they look so clear,
Yeah.
even when I tell my story, I look back at my own story, I'm like, what was I thinking? And it's very easy to second guess any decision you make.
Hmm.
And I would say that probably for a good decade or more, I didn't make a conscious decision. I would just
Hmm.
bounce from one situation to the next, just hoping to minimize the damage or to stop the boat from sinking. Or
Yeah.
you make decisions. You have to. It's not like you can sit there with your pen and pro and con list. When you hit crisis or you hit a relationship that is unhealthy and toxic, your brain literally tells you, just you got to save it, whatever that takes. I don't want to feel this way anymore, and I got to
Hmm.
stop this from
Hmm.
falling apart. And you just literally do things that you don't even know why you do until you get on the other side of them, and then it kind of is, you understand that you really were stuck in a situation where you didn't have any options, or at least you felt, your brain told you there were no options. Even if there were, you couldn't see them because you're so tunnel focused on something. And that's,
Yeah.
not just relationships, that's with your kids. That's anytime you find, somebody standing in front of you saying, make a decision,
Hmm.
you look around, and whatever your visual is, which becomes more and more narrow, you
Hmm.
just you act on the very limited things, tools that you're left with, because a lot of those
Yeah.
tools fly out the window.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what are one or two action steps or pieces of advice that you can leave our listener with that she can take with her and use on her healing journey?
I think one of the hardest lessons for me to learn, as I think I said, is that it doesn't really matter what other people think of you, and that's
Mm.
it. I don't, I think that that's really, a lot of us guide our lives based on, oh my gosh, what are people going to think?
Yeah.
And, you know, the problem with that is that if you continue to look for external validation for what you've done, or, hide the things about yourself that you don't want other people to know, then it will keep you stuck in a situation when not good for you at all.
Yeah.
So I would say, as hard as it is, no one likes to be judged, but you know, they're not judging you because they're judging a version of you that they don't know. They don't know what's going on in your home and they don't know all that you're dealing with. So try and put other people's thoughts about you behind what you think about you, because if you're okay with you, then at the end of the day, that's all that really matters. And the second thing is, kind of attached to that is, I think that sometimes we're so afraid of losing things. I used to lie
Hmm.
awake at night thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my house. I'm going to lose my car. I'm going to lose. But the very things that you think you can't do without are usually the very things that keep you stuck in something that you can't see your way out of. Because, on the other side of it, I would much rather lose my house, my car, and never have to deal with some of the things I was looking at. It was the very things I was afraid to lose that actually were keeping me stuck, and I really
Mm.
didn't need on the other side of it.
Yeah, it's interesting how that happens, eh? The things that you're most scared of losing are the things that are keeping you stuck.
Yeah. Well, and I always say, I was afraid of losing friends and family, but, now again, on the other side of it, if they didn't take the time to listen to me, if they didn't
Hmm.
come to me with their questions, if they just assumed they knew what was going on and made those decisions without consulting me or at least giving me the floor, were never my friends to begin with. And as hard as that is to believe, that people aren't your friends to begin with, it's true and it's okay. You
Yeah.
don't have to maintain all of your friendships. Sometimes those friendships are more destructive, or sometimes, that they're disallowing you from the growth that you need to do. So, yes, you might lose friends, you might lose family, but I would dare say that if you had them in your life and they were secure, there's no way you could lose them.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you for being on the podcast today, Julia. It was an absolute pleasure to share your story and hear your story. How can our listeners connect with you further if they'd like to do so?
So if you go to my website, juliebarthauthor.com, it has all my books, podcasts, and it also has two tabs. One is for my special needs daughter is now an artist, so she sells her art, and the proceeds go to fund our charity. So there's also a tab for the CJB outreach. If you want to get involved, if you're looking to partner, or even if you need assistance in any way, sometimes just reaching out to a third party is better than I feel like everyone in your world already knows your version of what's going on. And sometimes you just stop talking because you don't want, people to say, I told you so, or to
Yeah.
give you their advice. Sometimes you just need to step away from the situation and talk to someone you don't know,
Hmm.
because it's really nice to get an outside, completely unbiased opinion about this is what you should do. And to help you make an action plan, whether that means getting out, whether that means seeking therapy, whatever it is, just to talk to someone. So if you reach out on the website, you will get me because I'm the person that mans all of it. So
Well, thank you again so much for sharing your story on the Mamahood After Trauma podcast. It was a pleasure.
thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Mamahood After Trauma. Take one insight from today, breathe, reflect, and keep healing out loud. Subscribe to the podcast for more stories, tools, and support. And remember, Mama, you're breaking cycles and rising with honesty. Until next time, mend the past so you can Mama in peace.